Well, good morning. Welcome to Thursday on the Kick. And today is a bit of a solo episode. I'm going to be taking you through a few ideas as far as doing sales calls. We thought this might be a really good opportunity for a small business owner who maybe has expertise in their particular industry, doesn't really like the sales process, knows it has to be done. And where do you begin, particularly when it comes to handling the dear old phone? Yep, whether it's the mobile or picking up the one that's on your desk. Sometimes the idea of working with a phone can be a barrier to business growth. So today we're going to be talking about how to get those sales calls done. And stay with us right to the end because we've got some free software tools that may help you if you don't have anything to keep track of those sales calls. Now, in some industries like the trades, there are great apps so that tradies can go out on a job, quote it up, put all the details in, send out a quote, get an invoice. It's amazing how the technology is going ahead. But if you're just getting underway and you don't know what to use, I've got three tools that are totally free that'll get you started and put you on the right track. So, what's this all about? Why don't we just get straight into it and have a bit of a chat about the whole idea of sales calls? Now, we like to kind of just get a quick message out. We're so used to these days using instant messenger or maybe text, and just even an email could be a way of avoiding the call. But there is something incredible about talking to somebody on the phone that goes beyond those messages. And we often say that sometimes you're trying to read between the lines of that email, maybe trying to understand what somebody was getting at when they were on that text message that you got. But when we start to get on a call and we hear somebody's voice, we can hear their intonation, we can hear their emotion, and we realize that there's a little bit more going on. So calls can be very powerful. And we use calls in everyday life and particularly in business for a number of reasons. Can be to do with sales, talking to leads. Maybe it's about follow up. It could be follow up of a sales inquiry. It could be follow up of setting up a new partnership with another business. Sometimes we're just on a call for information, keeping customers happy. It takes a lot to acquire a new customer, and sometimes giving great calls and great service to your customers is equally important in making sure that you keep them. That saves you a lot of money and having to find another one. So, where do we go as far as getting sales calls right? One of the first things I'd say is you really need to plan. Don't wing it. Salespeople can have a bit of a reputation for just flying by the seat of their pants, but it's amazing how much more comfortable the process is and how much more successful the outcome is if you just put a tiny bit of planning into the whole idea. So, through this little 15-minute episode of The Kick, we'll give you some ideas about what kind of planning might be needed to make sure that you actually get there. Now, if you want to know who the king of motivation in the sales arena is, it's a guy called Zig Ziglar. You can still find podcasts of some of his messages. This is the guy who actually kind of kept his family alive by going door to door selling kitchenware. And then it just went on from pots and pans to greater things and became one of the top motivational speakers in the world. Sadly, left us a few years ago, but it's amazing how many people will still get a Zig Ziglar message and have a listen to it. You'll find them on YouTube, look them up in podcasts, and you'll find out some more details. Now, there's two key areas that I really think are important before you even make a phone call. The first is mindset, and the second is the environment. Let's start with mindset. You basically have got to be in a good place to make that call. Now, we know there are people that are dealing with anxiety, and there are also issues to do with just being busy. You've got so much happening in your head. But can I encourage you that it's going to be really important that if you're going to be making any form of sales call, then you really want to make sure that you are right in your mind. You've got some space for the call. You're not trying to rush it. You're not trying to wing it. You actually have a bit of a plan and your head is focused on the job. So here's four little points that might be helpful when it comes to mind prep. The first is plan the time. Block out a morning in your calendar or an afternoon. Block out a day where maybe you work from home to do some calls. Whatever the solution is, make sure that you plan your time. One of the things that you'll try to do, and I know this is sometimes impossible, but look at the idea that you're also going to block interruptions. Can you close the door to your office? Can you tell your team, listen, for the next 30 minutes, please don't bug me. I'll see you guys after lunch. In the meantime, block all those interruptions. Another thing that I really encourage you to think about is that you've got to have a plan for the call about what you're going to say. And I think it's really important that it's just in your language. You don't have to be a fancy salesperson to make sales calls. Now, there are call centers filled with hundreds and hundreds of people ringing people up with marketing calls. They're the ones we hate. And it feels like they are not transparent, that they really don't care. They're just reading a script. Now, that's not what we're talking about today. We're talking about small business owners who believe in their product, believe in their business, who just need to be able to make a phone call. So I'm pushing scripts and all of that to the side. Those marketing callers, no, we're not talking about that. But for yourself, really encourage you just to have a few bullet points and make sure that you've got some options up your sleeve. So I'm going to be calling somebody about a special offer. I'm going to be calling somebody about a service call for their bike or for their lawnmower. You've got a purpose to the call. And if they say that they don't want one particular thing, have a B option. Listen, appreciate that you didn't want a service for your lawnmower at the moment. Would you like me to book you in for a winter checkup in October or whatever the case may be? And equally, think about how you're going to close the call. It might be as simple as saying, "Thank you. I'll call you again in 6 months. Look forward to talking then." Or it might be another option. "Thanks very much for your time today. Appreciate that we didn't have something that you wanted right now, but maybe I can call you after the end of financial year and tell you about what we have to offer there." So have a couple of options up your sleeve. Now, the environment is so important to making calls. You've got to make sure that you're in a space where you're going to feel comfortable, first of all. And surprisingly, that means that it's just you being in your zone. It could be even about the temperature of the place, but make sure that you're in a comfy place. I'd encourage you to make sure that you also have a drink handy. It's amazing. Here we go. Got my coffee, keeping it going. If you're making a few calls, you want to make sure that the old voice is going to be available. So make sure you've got a drink handy. And listen, if you make two or three calls and you feel like it's just kind of getting to you a little bit, go and have a walk. The other thing that I really think is important is have a note solution. Now, whether you're a pen and paper person or whether you've got a note app, don't go onto a call without making sure that you are ready to take notes about what you're going to say or do next. Otherwise, if you rely on memory and a few calls start to meld into one, you might let somebody down, and all of that effort that you've put into making that call is essentially wasted. And this may sound like a surprise in the modern age, but make sure you've got a good phone. If you find that using your mobile phone in a particular area doesn't work, go to your landline. If you find using your buds in your ears, you sometimes can't hear the caller, use a different set of headphones or use the phone. But make sure that the technology is your friend and not going to get in the way of success. Looking at some of the great people of the past who've kind of motivated us on, Florence Nightingale said, "I attribute my success to this. I never gave or took any excuse." And one of the things I think that you can say that to is when you've got a plan. Now, I'm going to talk about three different types of calls that you might do. There are cold calls, there are warm calls, and there are the hot calls. Now, cold calls, you've probably heard about those. Those are the ones where you are going to be phoning somebody else. How do you handle those? Well, one of the things I think is really important is to get yourself in the shoes of the person that you're calling. Just imagine what it's like for you if you're getting a call out of the blue. Now, it's really important to know that sometimes it's the fact that we stagger the things we say that is the most irritating to the person on the other end. So if you're making cold calls, you know that you've got a set of contacts, you haven't talked to them for a long time, or you've been given a set of people that you might be able to ring. Just keep in mind how their day is going. If you simply are barreling on in like they should have been waiting for your call, you've got the wrong mindset. A cold call should be based around you having empathy for their situation. Listen, have you got a moment? It's Andrew here from Excite Media. I'm calling some of our clients or I'm calling some of our local contacts about what we're doing with websites for the end of financial year. Very quickly, a summary that explains who you are clearly by name, who you represent, and what you're calling about. You don't know whether they're dealing with a customer across the counter right now. You don't know whether they've had a bad hair day because one of their employees left or whatever it may be. So make sure that you don't stagger things out in such a way that they're thinking, what is this guy going on about? Will he get to the point? Get to the point quickly. You are the unexpected caller. They don't know what it's about. If you do that, you're more likely to get an opportunity where they'll at least tell you, call at a different time. We're not interested right now. What do you mean by a special end of financial year offer? That could be your pathway into the conversation. Keeping in mind that with cold calling, it's more high risk and low value. Yes, you may get a dramatically big sale, but you've got to get through a few of these cold calls before you actually get to the one that goes through to a sale. Now, then we get on to the warm calls. Now, these are a little bit different. We're starting to see the weather turn into a good direction with the warm calls, and these are generally probably referrals. People have said to you, listen, you need to call so and so. They said to me the other day that they're interested in what you do. So generally, this is a kind of semi-inbound phone call. They're interested. You don't really know the details of it, but if you make that call, you're going to find out a little bit more. And you can use the referral as a way of building trust to get to the next step. So these are generally medium risk, worth your time, and can be very valuable, particularly when they're referral based. If somebody trusts you well enough to then refer you, that's great leverage. And don't waste one of these calls. You've got to make sure that you get onto it. What about the hot calls or hot leads, as we sometimes refer to them? Well, hot can be dangerous and hot can be fun. What we would like to say is that these are generally referrals and inbound, and they're wanting a quick turnaround. These are people that are ready to act, and you've got to be ready to act with them. Get on the phone as soon as you hear that there's a hot lead. You know that there's low risk. It's very likely that you're going to have a short period of time to find out whether they do or don't want to buy. Your cold and your warm leads might take you quite a while. You might be working with them for a long period of time before you actually get a decision, a proposal out, an approval. But with the hot lead, you're more likely to find that they're ready to snap and they want you to act. And so run with them is a great opportunity. Generally low risk because they're hot to trot, low risk because it won't take too much of your time. Make sure that you get on those calls. Thomas Edison is renowned as one of the greatest inventors. Everything we know about him is that he was just always a man of ideas, not always the easiest guy to get along with. And we're thankful that he decided there were 999 ways you shouldn't make a light bulb because he kept trying and finally got to the right way. So, what I encourage you to keep thinking about is that sometimes when it comes to getting sales calls done, you've got to test a few ideas. Don't read a book or watch a podcast or watch a video or listen to a podcast that tells you this is the secret formula for doing sales. You've got to test things that work for you. One person is going to come at it a different way from another person. We're all different personalities. Keep in mind, so are your customers. They're all different as well. So always be willing to try some new ideas. They're the ways that you're going to actually make a difference. And then you've got to focus on getting something done. I was reading a quote by Walt Disney recently, and it's funny, it was a little bit ironic talking about sales, but it said, quit talking, start doing. Funnily enough, sales is about talking and doing at the same time. But with Gary Vaynerchuk here, he's saying, don't waste energy, focus on what you can control. So if you've got some calls that you could be making to clients, don't procrastinate. Don't be doing things to the side. If you, as a business owner, need to make a few calls, then please, I encourage you, make sure that you do get onto it. Now, what about those free tools that I promised you were part of this week's episode? Well, when you're keeping track of a lot of things moving, you may have software in your business already that keeps track of your task management. I'm going to do this next Thursday. I'm going to do this every first Monday of the month. But if you don't, here are two free introduction software packages that are really good. They work in the cloud. They also work on mobile and tablet and computer apps. So I use both of these. I actually use Todoist for a lot of my work and Excite Media tasks that I'm keeping track of. And I use Microsoft To Do for stuff to do with home. So that way I kind of know the Microsoft To Do app is my home stuff, personal stuff, family stuff. Todoist is Excite Media stuff. Nice way to separate them out. Now they do have plans that kind of go from $6 or $8 a month upwards if you go onto the premium plans. but their free plans are really great to get you started. We'll have a look at those very briefly in a moment. And then the other thing that I thought of is that when you're starting a small business, you really should be thinking at some point about getting a CRM. Now, CRM is a customer relationship management software. It's how you keep track of your customers, records about your customers. Now, that can include both prospective customers, your leads, your prospects, as well as clients, people who are actually customers who bought from you in the past. Now, when you get started, you kind of don't know what you want to choose and what CRM is going to suit you. So I found a free option for you. Again, it does have next steps that start, I believe, at about $8 a month and up. But the free option with Trello actually can do the work for most businesses. And I'm going to show you in a few moments just how to set up your own basic sales CRM using Trello. Nice and easy. Stay with us. We've got it coming shortly. Og Mandino, he was probably one of the top motivational guys in real estate sales in America. I wanted to leave you with this thought just tugging away in the back of your mind. Always do your best. What you plant now, you will harvest later. Because sometimes when you don't get that sale right now, it feels like you've wasted time and energy. Can I encourage you? Every sales call, finish with a smile. Always offer to be able to help somebody in the future. Don't write off an opportunity because that person that you're talking to could be the person that refers you to someone they know. It might be that the timing for you working with them is wrong, or the price for you working with them is wrong at this particular time. But times change. And so always leave things well as good seed in the ground. Look after your contacts, and you're going to find that you will go far. Now, let's have a look at some of the options as far as those free tools are concerned. So, the first one that we're going to have a look at is Todoist. So, Todoist is available. You can see there on the screen that you've got the ability basically to have different projects. You can run it on your app. You can set things up so that they are time-based or recurring. You can even get on some of these tasks that when you are in a particular area, so if you're near the shop and you've got to get a particular thing that you're meant to pick up, the task pops up on your phone because the phone knows you're near the shop that you're meant to get it from. Really nice and easy to use. So that's Todoist. And as I mentioned, there is a free version, and I use that for my Excite Media tasks. And then if you zip across to Microsoft and look up the Microsoft To Do app, then you've got this option, which is also really great. Looks nice on your phones and on your tablet, and that way you'll be able to manage things. And if you do what I do, you could use one for home, one for work, and that gets you started. Great way to also take notes on things that you're wanting to do. And we even put our groceries on this, so it's amazing what you can use these free apps for. And then finally, we were talking about Trello. Now, Trello actually comes from a company called Atlassian, and Atlassian is actually an Aussie company, a couple of guys who are now billionaires done well. But the Trello program uses what's called Kanban boards. Now, if you haven't seen that before, that's a good example on the screen there of a Kanban board. You'll see that there's a to do, and then the next column is doing, and then the next column is done. And under each column, there are cards. And you can actually put something in the to do column, create a card. We've got to work on the landscaping of our house. All right. And then when you're ready to start working on it, you drag the card into doing. And then when you've actually finished the job, you drag it to done. Now, that's very handy for a sales process. And anyone that's worked in sales and used what's called a CRM for sales knows that they have what they call a pipeline. So I'm going to take you into my Trello and show you how very quickly you can have your own sales pipeline running on a free account with Trello. Nice and easy at Trello.com. So let's take you across to my Trello board. This shows you a little bit of the chaos going on in my life because there's so many boards there. And you'll see in the top right, top left corner, there's a create button. So what we're going to do is we'll click on create. And it says create a board. And what we're going to do is give it a name. So we're just going to call this one a sales CRM. Now, the great thing is you can start with a template, you'll notice just below the create button there. So let's click on the start with the create template. Now, there's a lot of options that just appear there, but Trello has created a lot of these boards for all different parts of life, work, business, personal, hobbies. So we're going to go into the explore templates. Now you'll see on the left-hand side there, there's all these different departments, if you like: education, marketing, productivity, product management, project management. Now we're going to come down to sales, and even in the sales section, there's quite a few different Trello boards ready to go. Now, you'll see there's one there for a retail sales pipeline, one for a bike repair shop. We're going to use this one here, the one in the middle, for a CRM pipeline. So we'll click on this. When you go into the templates, it actually tells you a little bit about how the template works, so you can get a little bit of a preview. So, yep, that looks like us. You can actually scroll along the bottom here and see if that's what you're looking for. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on View Template just below there. And this is what could be your sales CRM, a free one ready to go for you to help with your small business. Now, have a look at the top of each column as it goes along. The first one is contacted us, followed by leads. In other words, we're ready to talk to them. Next one is contacted. The next one is meeting scheduled, then proposal delivered. And then we've got one or contact again because we need to put it off. Maybe it's a thing that they've said, talk to me in 3 to 6 months. Now, each of these have a card in there, and I'm just going to have a look at this first one under contacted us called Bull Industries. Click on that. It opens up, and somebody has copied and pasted what looks like part of an email. And I'm interested in a quote for a starship. Aren't we all? Please call me back on this number. So these are just samples in the template to help you get going. And you'll notice that there are images next to each card. That's so that you can actually put your staff in as users and you know who's looking after each of these cards. Now, this one for Infract looks like they've been contacted. So let's click on that one. And somebody's put in the phone number and details. Now, if we have contacted them and now they're ready for a meeting, we can click and drag it across and it will actually go into the next column. And then later on, we can actually keep them moving through the sales process. Now, because it's in a template, I can't drag these at the moment, otherwise I'll spoil the template. But there you go. If you wanted that template, there's a big blue button, create board from template, and you've got your very own ready to go. So in this edition of The Kick, we thought this would be a practical, how do you get started? Sales calls can be daunting, but it's about mindset. Get yourself away, give yourself some space, a nice drink, making sure that you're not going to be interrupted. That's the key. Also, keeping in mind just a few bullet points for the call and how you're going to finish the call. And you've got some free options now that could be helpful to make sure that you're ready to go as far as being able to take notes, do your project tasks after the call, and also to be able to keep track of leads using Trello as a basic CRM. We might cover some more kind of top level CRMs that are very popular in another edition. Keep in mind, Excite Media is here to support you. We've got the end of financial year just around the corner. And if you would like to talk to us about getting something such as a website or digital marketing done that's going to help in terms of your tax return and making sure that you get onto that 120% write-off that they're talking about that came out in the budget, then do contact us on excitemedia.com.au. We'd love to be able to chat to you about that. In the meantime, I'll look forward to catching up with you next Thursday. Special episode. We're going to be talking to Scotty and Christine. They have Pet Express. We've told you how we won the Australian Web Awards for SEO. That was for 2021. Scotty and Christine have been absolutely working frantically on growing their business in America, doing pet transport, and we'll be able to tell their story next week. Look forward to catching you then.